Funky Politics.
Welcome back to a brand new edition of Funky Politics, powered by the Kudzukian Network. I am DC, sitting here in the chair, along with my trusty co-host who sit here with me every week as we try to bring it to you real, right, and funky. Doc Ward, how are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, my man. I'm hanging in there. And we also have Jen Littlejohn. Jen, welcome back from Faneuil Hall? Is that what they call that thing up there in Boston?
I don't know. Beantown. Right?
Beantown.
Yeah.
She was up there playing baseball. Beantown, whatever. And you know what? On today's show, we're going to talk about ministry to medicine, a wonderful work that's been produced by some guests we have in the studio. Not only do we have Pastor Antoyne Green in the studio, we also have Dr. Andrea Willis, who happen to have had a chance to write some wonderful work together. And also brother and sister, right? Welcome to the program.
We are.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
Let's do this. Let's just jump right into this thing. We want to talk about ministry to medicine. I know what it means to me. You being a Pastor Green, you being a pastor of the church, and of course, Dr. Willis, you being a physician. But give us a little bit of background. How did this work become this work to you all?
It was a work that I really have to give her credit for, that she brought the idea to the table. And to make a very long story short, our family has had, through the course of years, like just about any family, a lot of people within the family that's had medical concerns, a lot of different issues medically. And oftentimes, because I'm the one that's local with the family, I'm the one that's calling my sister, of course. She's in Chattanooga now, but prior to then, Nashville, D.C., I'm the one calling her saying, hey, this is what the doctor said. Hey, this is what they're looking at. Here's where we're believing. And she would always come with the approach of, well, what does this say? What does this say? What are these numbers? What is that number?
Right.
And then her response always would be, medically speaking, this. This is what I expect. This is what I look for. And, of course, my response, having been a pastor come this June, if the Lord says, over 20 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. My response would always take more of a faith perspective. Okay, yeah, this says this, but I'm just believing God. God's going to do it. And oftentimes we would clash because it felt to me as if she really was not considering the faith component of the issue, while at the same time, sometimes it felt to her or appeared like I was not really embracing what the science of it was saying. And so sometimes those conversations got a little tense, they got a little heated, and this has happened over the course of a few years. And so she came up with the idea of, hey, why don't we come together and do a collaboration about when ministry meets medicine, and that's how we ended up here.
So Dr. Willis, let me ask you this question. Now, who's the oldest, you or Pastor Green? Which one of you guys are the oldest?
She is.
So you're the big sister, right?
Yes, not by much. And I already have issue with something that he said, but I mean,
But what was that? What was the issue? I
he
want to know.
said that he would come from the faith perspective.
Uh-huh.
I was coming from the faith perspective as well, but my thing is I want to make an informed decision even in what I pray for. So I do want to know the facts, and that's my prayer target. And so just because I asked for the facts up front does not mean that I'm not coming from a place of faith. I just like to know exactly what it is that I'm praying for. And I also want to know how big the testimony is going to be.
Wow.
Because if it's a big thing versus a small thing, I mean, there's something at the end of that. So I really want to know what it is that we're talking about. And I've heard him say before that he felt like my analytical approach somehow implied that he was ignorant. That was never it. It was, again, I think an informed approach is best, and that's what I wanted him to have, is the facts.
So you guys are like juxtaposed between the medical and the miracle, the science and the sermon.
I guess so, but I think what it is, though, when it really came to our dad having kidney cancer, we knew that we both wanted the same thing. We both loved him. We both wanted to see him heal. So that's when this really came about is, hey, you know what? We need to step back, because at the end of the day, how do we use our respective anointings basically to be there for him and to support him through all that he needs?
Right.
And so that's really why we wanted to have the conversation, because I definitely believe in his anointing, but I'm anointed as well, but in a different way. And we have to learn how to respect those.
Right. So with both of your callings working together, I think you all said something to that effect in your book. When the disciplines are working together, it can save lives. I think that really goes without saying. But what is the overall message that you're trying to convey, other than that, to the reader when they're reading? What is the experience that you want all of us to get from what you all are trying to put together? And go right ahead.
I'll just say, like, healing comes in different forms. I can tell you I never could become a doctor if I did not have God on my side to help me through that journey. And I think healing sometimes comes through medicine. I think sometimes God can choose to heal supernaturally, and sometimes I think he can heal on the other side. And so my thing would be to embrace all the different ways that God can heal. Don't limit yourself.
And when we actually got into the project, when you start reading, like in January, February, it seems like we are really contradictory as far as our thoughts and the way that we write and we think. And at the end, by the time we got to the end of the book, I think the reader will discover that we have more common ground than we do differing ground. However, it is one of those things where, as we wrote, and really what we're trying to get over to the reader is that there can be a synergy between the ministry and the medicine. There can be a synergy between facts and what I call biblical truth. Yes, the facts are the facts, but as one of my mentors in the gospel says, he stands on the product that he sells.
Right.
And so my whole thing is, yes, we can look at what science says. We can look at how you really feel, what's going on in your family, what's going on in your life. But there can be a meeting of ministry and medicine, and not only just medicine, but any situation, any circumstance that's going on in your life and your family. And we're just trying to let everybody know that there is a responsibility on both sides to embrace fact, but then also to have a foundation in faith that can bring you to a place of truth.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kudzukian Network.
Right. So I'm listening, and one of the things that I like about, both of you coming together on this project is that you share different perspectives. So the faith perspective, and of course the professional, the medical professional perspective. And so some of the things that that I know, just like Dr. Andrea said, she believes that she's blessed to do what she is called to do, and I believe that as well. Like Proverbs 18:16, your gifts will make room for you and bring you before great men. Mm-hmm. And so, but one of the things I'll say though, sometimes and this is just personally, I feel that sometimes people don't do the work and rely too much on faith to think that their faith will heal them in some sort of way, but from a factual standpoint, or what the medical professionals say based on whatever diagnosis, is that doesn't always come together. And some people, to me, I think, can feel disillusioned. How do you all deal with those types of situations where people are saying just pray whatever ailment or disease away, and hoping that in praying that God would heal them instead of them doing the work to get there?
Actually, you just really hit on the January writing, and the way that this book is written is my sister always begins the topic for that particular month, and she'll write on that topic, and then she'll always bottom at the end of her writing pitch to me to the effect of, "Isn't that right, preacher?" or something to that effect.
Just like a sister.
It is. And actually the January writing, it deals with the pitch that she sends is, doesn't the Bible say something to the effect of faith without works is dead, and that is, it is absolutely true. I don't believe, and I tell our members all the time, is I believe God. I believe that there is nothing God cannot do. I believe that God is able to do exceeding abundantly above all we shall ask or think. However, I also tell them, don't you go throw away your blood pressure medicine. Don't you go throw away your cholesterol medicine. And that sort of thing, because God can use, through medical science and otherwise, ways to heal us. But the idea of where we are really juxtaposed in the January writing is the way that she kind of throws it to me is there is work to do, and I like the example she gave. If someone has diabetes, they probably don't need to have the big hunk of sweet potato pie, and they probably don't need to have that. And that is true, but the way that I responded to her was, we also have to look at, yes, faith without works is dead, but we also have to embrace the fact that for many people who are dealing with these issues, it's not as simple as just telling them, put down the sweet potato pie. Right. It's not as simple as just telling them, put down the cake, because for some, as we know, in those areas, depending on what's going on in their life, that is where they're finding comfort. That is where they're finding peace. That, whether it's right or not, that is where their resource is. That is where their strength is. So we have to minister to them holistically, rather than just saying, you need to do this. And we have to give people the space and the time, the support, and the resources to be able to put the work together with the faith in order to match it, in order that we might be able to get to that healing place.
Dr. Willis, let me pull you in on this one right here. And I noticed that the journal style of writing, right? The faith without work. So you're requiring me to do something as I go through this work with y'all. Where did you get that idea from?
Well, because being healthy and being whole in mind, body, and spirit, it is not a passive proposition. And I think that's what people think a lot of time. It really is active. And I do understand that, especially for behavior change, it takes time. So that's why we wanted to walk with you 365 days of the year, so that you could be active in the process. And so that's what I think it takes. I think that he agrees that it would take that as well. And so that's why we set it up that way. And again, I understand what he's saying. Things take time. People need time. And people are running out of time. So I feel compelled, like, we have got to get you active. You can't sit back and say you don't know. But you have to at least be willing to be made willing.
I think the average person sitting in a pew next to me, I'm at Mount Pisgah CME Church, so I've got a little bit of a seasoned membership where I'm at, right? I think the average person sitting next to me, leave it alone, Doc. Just because you have Metropolitan.
Are you trying to say that your congregation is a little older?
Yeah, we're a little seasoned, Dr. Willis in Memphis here. But I think the average person sitting next to me has got a pill bottle in their bag or took something before they got to church. And I don't know, is it a matter of level of education that we have found out in our communities that I can accept the fact that I can still have my God, but I still need my prednisone too? Doc,
prednisone.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe
prednisone.
Dr. Willis, don't worry about this man over here.
Man.
You get it. I just went to the
What kind of church did you? Yeah, you guys need a lot of healing over there, man. People taking prednisone.
Let her answer the question. Get out of here, man. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I think sometimes that we will get complacent with what we consider maybe a norm in the community. It doesn't mean that it is where we need to be. Yeah. Like you hear all the time in the South, everybody got a little sugar. Yeah. Everybody got a little sugar. And they pretend like that's okay. Like that's the norm because everybody in the family has it. That's not the norm. And that should not be the norm we want to pass on to the next generation. So I just think, we can't sit up and it's almost like we have degrees of what's bad. And that's one of the things we even talk about. Like, we're quick to come against cancer. And I feel like we're quick to do that because we think people are victims of that. But we're not so quick to come against obesity and heart disease. Not to mention that obesity helps to contribute to certain types of cancer. So what about coming against those things? So I think it's about changing the mindset of what we should consider normal.
Right. And so when you talk about changing the mindset, I do believe, when you have a when you have a health journey, it's about transformation. It's about change. And so, when you're going through this transformation, you've got to do some things that you haven't done before. And a lot of the diseases that I know in the Black community are preventative, right? And so, I shouldn't say right, Doc. I mean, you got to correct me if I'm wrong.
What are you saying?
So, so when you talk about diabetes, when you talk about obesity, when you talk about, asthma and some other things, I think that some of those that is brought on by, what we put into our bodies and the lifestyle, right? And so,
not necessarily choices, but lifestyle based on
lifestyle. And so some of that, of course, if you live in an impoverished area, you're dealing with food deserts. And so some people are probably drinking, jungle juice and eating hot chips, right? Hey. And so we know that contributes to, high blood pressure and those types of things. And it's funny because I'll digress a second.
Don't get us shut down now. We got a lot of jungle juice drinkers.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute.
Fuck your politics, people.
Now, my son used to run track at a local high school here, and he had a friend who was slim, ran track, but he had high blood pressure. He looked healthy for all intents and purposes, but he was sick all the time, and but he looked healthy. Right. So those types of things. But I want to go back to pointing out about prevention and transformation and aligning to being spiritual and putting things in our body that's good for us. How do you all deal with that? I mean, because at the beginning of the year, I do the Daniel fast.
He talked about holistically. How do you collectively
and change the mindset of people so they won't be taking the medications, to slapping a Band-Aid on the solution on what's ailing them. Sure. But how do they, how are you pouring into people where they are getting ahead of what's what can lead to stroke or hypertension and all those types of things.
Well, that is one of the other issues that we address within the book, because she asked me the question: should the church have a greater responsibility in educating and informing and that sort of thing, and we kind of clash.
So what do you think?
So tell us about the clash, because that's what I want to get to.
That there is a responsibility. There is a responsibility. However, I think that we have to get to the place to where we are metered in doing that, because these days with everything, there's such a fine line between crossing lines. Yeah. But one thing, and you had mentioned earlier, Bishop Walker,
yes,
my spiritual covering, her pastor, one thing that he talks about quite often, even when we sit down with him as pastors under his leadership, one thing that he talks about quite often is even changing the mindset, even from the leadership in the church, because he brought up something that is very true. For the Black preacher, we do revival. I average several a year. Right. He goes all over the place, and he says, just think about what we do. Typically we don't. I'm one. I don't eat before I preach. I eat something very, very light. And he says, so think of what the typical Black church does. Yep. So we'll have revival at 7. We'll get out at 9. Get out at 9:30. First thing that we do is we'll run either, depending on the area you're in, we'll run to somebody's house and
they'll feed you good, won't they, Doc?
Right. And we'll have that skillet fried chicken, fried chicken,
black skillet.
Yes, and the macaroni. The macaroni's got about 5 different cheeses melted all into it.
Got to have 5, and one of them is Velveeta, which may not even be cheap.
and the syrupy sweet tea that gives you this thing. He says, so we eat that, or we'll go to the steakhouse and we'll get the cowboy ribeye. And
Pastor, we are healthy. There are greens at the table.
With ham hocks in it.
Yeah, with ham hocks and fat back and 2 or 3 ladles of
this
bacon
sounds like
grease.
A testimony,
right?
Pastor.
It is,
and that's revival. That's not even Sunday. That's like revival.
It is,
that's Tuesday night.
And that's the one thing that Bishop Walker's really been talking to us about. And one thing that I'm actually trying to do myself is to moderate these things. So now personally, I'm trying to eat a healthy meal before I go preach, and then when the worship is over, maybe some fruit, maybe some granola,
Oh Lord, no, I
water.
Can't. Doc, I can't be your
that
adjutant.
sort of thing.
Granola after church.
Right. Hey, but here it is, because here's what he talks about all the time. He says, "How can you lead?
Yeah.
How can you lead when you're asthmatic? How can you lead when you can hardly breathe in the middle of your preaching?"
Exactly.
And so that is a part of where the church has responsibility. How do I talk in the book about how do we change the repast? Y'all know.
We don't.
Y'all know the black church repast.
Yeah, but we don't change it.
Fried
right?
chicken, green beans, potato
Sure.
salad,
Mashed potatoes,
potato salad,
and
mashed
gravy.
potato, that sort of thing.
Hold on now. I got one Saturday. I got a funeral Saturday morning.
But you're not-
I'm a pallbearer. I'm not starting the funeral. I just got to be there
Yeah.
to help carry the body out.
Have you ever done? I don't want to make a sport out of pallbearing, but have you ever been on pallbearing? You like sitting there, and you're at the front of the church, so you know the kitchen's usually there, and you can smell the roll.
Lord have mercy.
You know, you can like smell the roll.
I was ready to carry the body out there, but Dr. Willis, I want to give Dr. Willis the last word on this thing. Yeah. Doc, let me ask you this. How can we get Pastor Green here, Dr. Walker, and all these other fine pastors around the country to convince us, those of us who are sitting there, that not only is the word that they're preaching is good, but the word they're preaching about in terms of our eating ought to be changed as well? How do we do that, Doc?
Honestly, and I told my brother this, it starts for me when I look up in the pulpit and I look to see if the preacher is walking the walk. You can tell me something all day, and I can look at you and tell if you're practicing it. Again, not that things don't take time, but I mean, when people adore the pastor, if the pastor says, why don't we do this healthier, and I hear my brother saying he is starting to implement that, then people will follow that. I mean, it's not easy, but I don't know when the Christian journey is easy.
It's not. It's not.
And we have implemented it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
If
a good word.
you come to our church, you're not getting any fried chicken. It's going to be baked.
Doc, I might have to go down to the CME church next door. Dr. Willis, I might not be visiting you at Mount Zion because I know y'all eat together up in Nashville. But I'm going to pray with you, though.
But before we get out,
We gotta get
I
out of
will
here,
say this. I love talking to the faith-based community because I believe you have so much potential to change people's lives. And so I challenge you and all pastors who are listening to make their churches their places of worship, these institutions in black community.
Hold on. I would tell my pastor to
Hold on, wait a minute. Let me finish. But make your centers, your institutions, places of transformation where people can change their lives. So whether it's putting computers in a room, whether it's bringing workout equipment in rooms, make those places centers where people can change their lives. I think worship is about transformation, expanding your faith, and that's where you get it. I mean, I think it's a really huge opportunity for partnerships.
But I will tell you, and what I said in the book and what I've said to my sister as well, is while that is absolutely true, particularly in the predominantly black church, particularly in the South, talking about time, it is one thing that it is more than just the suggestion of vision and the implementation of an idea, because we all have seen it.
That's right.
The really stone cold traditional churches, you have a hard time.
That's right.
Going against what Grandmom has done for the last 115 years,
Of
and
course.
whether that is food, whether that is putting in a praise team, whether that is, it does not
Bringing in
matter.
a guitar.
Whatever it is, you're going to have a hard. And believe me, when I brought the suggestion of, hey, we need to really look at our repast. We need to start looking at what we're serving. Can we do this in a healthier way?
Right.
My church is not. If the Lord says so, I founded the church in June of 2000. So this coming year will be our 20th year.
Amazing.
So it's not like my sister and I's home church that's been there over 100 years.
Yeah.
I have people that's been with me from day one that still were not feeling, let's go get baked chicken and barbecue chicken. Where is the fried chicken? And so it is hard sometimes to even deal on those traditional levels. And so it does take time. It does take a lot of wisdom, and some stuff you really do have to phase in as well.
Dr. Willis, let me ask you this as we get ready to get out of here. Where can we find this wonderful book, Ministry to Medicine? And is there some other than coming to Mount Zion to see you up there with Dr. Walker now? What else can we do now? I will institute my faith a little bit, but I ain't quite ready to give up the fried chicken walk
I
yet.
might have to stop by Popeyes and get the sandwich before we go up there.
Go ahead, Dr.
We're on
Willis,
a
you got
road
it.
trip, but I got to
You
have the
can
box.
You can find us on whenministrymeetsmedicine.com. You can order books from there, or you can also order from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can find us on Instagram if you want to follow us there at When Ministry Meets Medicine, on Twitter at Men Meets Med, and I'm actually doing a book signing in Memphis on Saturday at Novel at 10 a.m.
Oh, Lord. You're gonna be now. I promise you, if we go to lunch,
Say
after
that again, though. Say that again. It's a little
Saturday
distant.
at Novel.
Saturday novels.
She will be doing a
at
book
10
signing.
a.m.
10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Dr. Willis, Pastor Green. Thank you so much for being a part of our funky politics family and bringing a good word.
Will you be there also at the time?
I will not. I since I had to come in town today. Hey, talking about the church.
Right.
I've got our end of the year church meeting.
Sure. Sure.
Dr. Willis, we about to get him out of so he can make the meat.
It's gonna be the
It's gonna
fried
be some chicken,
the fried chicken,
mac and cheese. Yeah.
That's gonna be the vote right there.
He said
Sweet
he founded
potato
the
pie.
church. He said he founded the church. He might be stuck.
And that sweet tea, that syrupy sweet tea.
Thank y'all so much for being on Funky Politics. Hey, look, come back and see us again, will you?
Thank you so much for the privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. We're out right here on Funky Politics. DC, Doc Ward, and
Connecting
Little
the
John.
dots. All right.
Funky Politics. Recorded at Kudzukian Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by Kudzukian.